Hello, Edward here. Let's take a look at some of the new features and changes in ZerOS 7.10 software. And probably a good place to start is to talk about Phantom ZerOS. Phantom ZerOS is the software that allows you to emulate any console running ZerOS on your laptop or PC. And the big update that we've got here is a big refresh and redesign for the front panel windows of the FLX range of consoles. So if I go and emulate a FLX console, you can see the front panel has been refreshed and much easier to use, and much easier to see all of the different controls and be able to use them. So that's the FLX S24. What I'll be using for this session is the full-size Flex, and again on the full-size Flex, that's had a refresh and a redesign as well. The FLX S48 has also been updated too. So as well as Phantom, let's take a look at some of the other features that have been changed or updated or are entirely new. And one of those is multicell fixture control. And you might be thinking, okay, well, what do we mean by that? Well, a multicell fixture is basically a fixture that has multiple different light outputs that can be controlled independently. So, for example, in my visualization here, I'm running capture visualization software, top right of my window here. We can see I've got some LED battens here. I've got some 10-cell LED battens. And therefore, I can control each individual pixel of those battens. It's a multi-cell fixture with multiple cells. You might be thinking, well, yeah, I've always been able to control multi-cell fixtures in ZerOS. Well, yes, you have, but there's a very big update in ZerOS 7.10 to how we handle these fixtures, and it will make your life a lot easier and a lot quicker when programming them. So let's dive in and take a little bit of a look about how we can actually control these fixtures. First thing I'm going to do is take down this lighting state that's currently running, and I'm going to go to my channel faders, and then let's go and raise the faders of those multi-cell fixtures. Let's raise the faders of those battens first of all. So if I go and raise the faders of these 4 battens, I'm just going to zoom into those in capture. We can see I can push their fader up, they will illuminate just as you might be used to. But what we can also now do is go and apply colours, and if you push up a fader of a batten, tap red, all cells of that batten will go red, for example, in exactly the same way that you would turn on a normal LED fixture and apply red, and they would all go red. So we can control whole multi-cell fixtures at once very easily. But what we can also do is actually control the individual cells of a batten as well. So if I go and deselect all of these battens apart from this first batten here, what I can now do is hold Shift and tap the channel button. And that allows me to step through each cell. So I've held Shift, tap the channel button, and made the first cell go blue. I'm then going to repeat that, make the next cell go magenta, and I can just repeat that. And that's how I can very easily step through and access all of the individual cells of my fixture individually. I can control them all individually. So we can use the channel button for that, but if you're on a console with syntax, such as the full-size Flex here that I'm emulating, there's lots of additional syntax we can use. For example, I can go and say .8 enter just to select cell number 8 and make that one go blue. And so there's lots, if you're on the full-size Flex, there's lots of extra syntax you can use that is going to really speed up controlling multi-cell fixtures. So we can control them as just a whole unit, or we can actually drill down and control the individual cells individually. But something else that we can do is fanning. Now, fanning is something that's in ZerOS. Basically, the way of explaining it is it allows you to select a group of lights at once, control them all at the same time, However, actually be able to control each individual fixture within that group slightly differently. So let's take a look at how we can control that with our multi-cell fixtures. So I've got these LED buttons here, as we can see, and all I've done is, of course, I'm going to just simply raise the fader of that light. Just simply raise the fader of my batten. And I can then go to my color picker and I can, of course, mix across all of the cells. But what I can also do is, using my multi-touch screen, if you go and pinch and use 2 fingers on your multi-touch screen, you can actually spread the colors across the pixels of your batten. I can actually extend that. So this time I'm going to select all of my battens. First of all, make them all white, and then repeat that process. And this time I can actually spread the colours across all of the individual pixels of my selected battens. And so that's really useful, because we can go and control and fan our colours across our multi-cell fixtures. But not all multi-cell fixtures are battens. So let's take a look at some other fixtures. This time, I'm going to go to my faders window again, and we're going to look at the VL800 event wash fixtures, which I've got here. These are some nice little compact movers that you'll notice have actually 7 LEDs in each mover. Now, you can operate the mover in kind of a normal mode, if you like, so that each whole fixture just has a single set of colour controls, or you can operate the fixture with the ability to actually control each of those cells individually. Now remember, with our battens, we raised our faders, spread the colours across our lights, and that fanned across the individual pixels. It's slightly different if you don't have a batten fixture. So these fixtures are multi-cell fixtures. I'm able to control each individual pixel individually. To show you that, I could go and say .1 enter and go to my colours and just make that first pixel blue if I wanted to. So you can see I can do that there. But this time I'm just going to go and double tap clear, and then we can raise those again. If I go and use the multi-touch this time on these fixtures, the console doesn't by default fan across the individual pixels. The console knows the difference between a linear batten and just a multi-cell moving head like this, and so the console will do different things depending on the type of light that you're controlling. So in my case here, I can get some nice punchy colours from each of my movers, rather than fanning across the individual pixels. And of course, you might be thinking, and it's a very valid point, well, what if I do want to fan across the individual pixels? Well, if you're on the full-size Flex, you've got lots of additional controls, such as your syntax. If you want to know more about the syntax on the full-size Flex, do go and check out the dedicated Flex training session. But if you're on the full-size Flex, yes, there is a way of actually being able to fan at pixel level on non-linear fixtures as well. But it's just good to be aware of that if you've got linear fixtures and you go and fan, it will be fanning across the individual cells, whereas if you've got non-linear fixtures, such as these VL800s, actually you're going to be controlling each kind of block of colour at once. And it's a similar rule for effects. So if I were to go and go to my effects window, I can go and run a intensity effect across these lights. And like we said, the console knows that they are not linear fixtures, and so it's flashing each individual light at once. I can actually, on the Flex console, go and, if I wanted to, spread that across the individual pixels if I needed to, as I've said. But by default, the console knows that they're not linear, and so will actually, by default, run the effects across the whole fixtures. Our battens, on the other hand, let's go back, let's double tap clear, let's go to our faders window, and we're going to go and raise these battens again. This time, if I go to my effects and run that same effect, we can see that I'm actually rippling through the pixels because the console automatically knows, yep, it's a linear fixture, and therefore it fans at cell level rather than whole fixtures. Again, if you're on the full-size flex, actually, you can tell the console, no, I don't want you to fan at pixel level. And instead, it will just flash those lights on and off, one after the other, in blocks. So as you can see, if you're on the flex, you've got that extra level of control if needed. So we've looked at just general control there. We've spoken about how we can raise the intensity and all of our pixels come on. We've looked at how we can change the color of all of our fixtures at once. And we've also looked at how we can actually use the channel button and syntax to drill down and actually control individual cells. And we've looked here about how we can use fanning. But it's worth bearing in mind that multicell control in ZerOS goes a lot deeper than that. It also applies to homing fixtures, highlighting. If you're on the larger flex, things like parking and rem dim, all of that can now actually be done at cell level as well as kind of whole level. So as well as multicell control, and there's loads of stuff to go to look at with multicell. So if you've got multicell fixtures, do have a play and get used to all of the different functions and features. But as well as multicell control, there are some other really useful features that are introduced in ZerOS 7.10. One of those is plus and minus syntax. So let's say that I'm going to go to page 1, because page 1 allows me to control my front light of these fixtures. So let's zoom out, and I'm actually going to go and just bring on the lights on stage here, my front light, and let's go and focus on our lead singer so we can see things a little bit easy. And let's say, well, I'm really happy with that lighting state on stage. I've got my levels just how I want them. That's perfect. There's all a really nice balanced lighting state. But then you decide, it would actually be really good if I could have that at 50% brightness. Well, we've now got syntax that we can use for that, because we can say at minus 50 enter. And if you were to say at minus 50 enter, that would be telling the console you want your lights to go to 50%. If you're on the Flex console, the way you access plus and minus is using the up and down arrow keys. And if you hold shift and use the up or down arrow keys, that will give you plus or minus respectively. So for my example here, I'm actually going to type in at minus, so shift down, 50 enter. And if I do at minus 50, that takes my fixtures to 50% of the levels they were at. Now, of course, because that is a syntax, a command line based process, you can't access that on FlexS. So if you're on FlexS, don't forget you do, of course, still have your intensity wheel that you can use to also bring the levels up or down if you wish to. So we've got our plus and minus syntax that we can use on the Flex. And as well as being able to use the plus and minus for changing the levels of our lights, we can actually use it to adjust fade times as well. If you go and click on a fade time in your Q stack, in your Qs window, you can then use shift plus or minus on your console to actually bring that time up or down in second increments. So that's a useful little feature to be aware of as well. So that's your plus and minus syntax and plus and minus for fade time control. But something that all of us can enjoy is move to functionality. On Flex Range, before, you could just copy, but now you can actually move as well. So for all consoles, you can move cues or playbacks. And if you're on the full size Flex, you've actually also got the ability to move groups and palettes too. So let's take a look at that. Let's say that this Q stack here, which is on my master playback, let's say that I would like to move that from the master actually to playback 7. If we hit copy, we now have a move button in here. We now have the option to say whether we're actually copying or moving. So if I've got that set to move, and I then actually go and say that I want to copy, I want to move my master playback, I can go and say move my master playback to playback 7. And we can now see that I've got my playback 7 is illuminated. If I press and hold view and tap playback 7's button, I can now see that playback 7 is my cue stack and my master playback is now empty. Of course, if I want to move it back, I can do the same thing. Copy, move, and say that I want to move 7 back to the master. Now, as well as going and tapping copy and then choosing move, there's a little shortcut to be aware of, and that is a shift copy. And if you do a shift copy, that will automatically select move for you. So let's do that example this time, but with our cues. So let's say I wanted to move my Q2, which looks like this. Let's say I wanted to move Q2 to Q7. This time I'm going to hold shift and tap copy, and I'm simply going to say 2 enter, 7 enter. And that has then moved Q number 2 to Q7. It's essentially renumbered that queue, if you like, and shuffled it down the queue stack. So that's how we can move our queues now. As I mentioned, if you are indeed on the Flex console, the standard Flex, as I'm emulating here, you do have the ability to move groups or palettes. So if I go to my groups window, I might want to say, okay, well, group 71, I actually want to move that to 81. Let's say I want to move group 71 to group 81 to rearrange my groups window. To do that, I can now use the syntax, and you can watch me type this in the command line here. I can say group 71, shift copy, which will bring move to into the command line, group 71, move to 81, enter. And that's then moved it. So that syntax is group number, shift copy, number, enter. And that's going to give you a move to rather than a copy. I'm actually going to move that back. So I'm now going to say group 71, 81, sorry, group 81, move to 71 to move that back. Now, on the subject of move, as well as having move to, there are also actually some updates to move on dark. So let's take a look at some of those now. So let's go into our queues here, and let's say that in Q8, which is my queue after this one here, let's say that I would like lights 51 through 57 on, and I would like them in position 12. Yep, something like that. So I would like this lighting state to be my Q8. So I'm going to tap record and tap my master playback button, and that automatically gets recorded in to Q8. Now, what I'm going to do is raise my master playback, and you may be quite familiar with the fact that if you've got fixtures moving on dark, they'll be displayed with a grey background with a black 0. But an update to ZerOS 7.10 is that now disappears once the fixtures have finished moving. So what's happening here is as soon as we go into Q1, the console's saying, okay, well, I'm not using these fixtures, but am I using them later on? And yep, the answer is yes, it's using them in Q8. So just like ZerOS has always done, at the earliest opportunity, it's tried to get those lights prepped and ready for you. So in this case here, we go into Q1, those fixtures go grey to indicate they're being prepped for us. Once they're done, that then disappears, meaning those fixtures are now ready. So now if I were to go through my queue stack, running through my queues, I can now go into Q8, and my fixtures are ready in the position. I don't see a live move. But as I've said there, ZerOS has always tried to move your fixtures at the earliest opportunity. But now you can actually dictate when the fixture is moved by the queue stack. So At the moment, it's of course moving in Q1 because that's the earliest opportunity that it can prep those lights. But maybe we don't want those fixtures to be prepped until later down the queue stack. So what I can do is I can go into the playback settings. To open the playback settings, press and hold setup and tap the playbacks button. From the top, we can go and choose move on dark. And within move on dark, we can tell our console, don't move position. We don't want position to be moved automatically, and click OK. This time, I can go into Q1, and I see that my fixtures have not moved. So of course this means that if I were to now work through my queues and then go into Q8, I do see the live move, because my console's now not moving position. So what I can now do is go into the settings of the queue where I would like those fixtures to be prepped. So for me, I'm going to go into the settings of Q7, and I'm going to go and say move. And you'll see that my button here has automatically changed from a don't move to a move, and I can then click OK. And now I've done that, I get MP, move position, displayed in my queue settings. So this time, there we are, there's my Q6. I'm now going to go into Q7, and at this point my fixtures now move, meaning they're now ready, just like we saw before, for Q8. But now ZerOS is moving them in Q7, because that's when I've told it to, rather than at the earliest opportunity, which would have been Q1. So that is the updates and changes to Move on Dark, to give you that little bit extra control. Now, as well as all of these kind of quite big functions we've spoken about today, there's also a very big, large library update as well included in ZerOS 7.10. Lots of new fixtures, so you go check it out. If you have a fixture that maybe was missing, you may be able to find that it's actually now included in the library, which is always good news. If your fixture is not included in the library, as always, just drop us an email, fixture support, and we can get that updated and included in the library for you. And as well as the library, there are actually over 30 other enhancements included in ZerOS 7.10 as well. So it's a really big update, lots of nice new features, and lots of nice enhancements and tidy ups as well. Such as the Phantom ZerOS reskin and all of the features we've spoken about today. So go ahead, download it from the website. Enjoy the extra control and the extra functionality this gives you, and also do check out the other dedicated training videos that will be available for Flex, and the training videos that will be available for Flex S consoles as well, so that you can learn how to use the new multi-cell control specifically on your console. And that will allow us to go a little bit more in depth. If you've got any questions, do please get in touch, and hope to see you on another video. Hope to see you on the next session. Thank you very much.